So picking up where we left off, he refers to himself as a prodigy in this sense. And if you don't know what the term prodigy means, a prodigy, it usually refers to uh, a young person endowed with exceptional knowledge or talent. Uh, right? That's the term prodigy, right? It doesn't have to refer to a young person. Also, you might need to know the word endowed, right? Endowed simply means gifted, right? Meaning if something has been gifted to them, it means they possess, right? A large gift to university is often called an endowment. So when you say endowed, that means given, right? A young person who has as possession of exceptional knowledge or talent. And what we see with Hyde, right? Like he's saying to uh, Lanyon here, and technically Lanyon hasn't even said it's Hyde yet. I think I'm pretty sure just by the description of him, you figure that out by now. But he said, if he said, choose wisely. I can show you something that will just blow your mind, stagger the unbelief of Satan, right? Make you believe in miracles, right? That's what he's basically saying. Stagger the belief of Satan, the unbelief, the spirit of nothingness, right? I will make you believe in miracles if you stay, is what he's saying, and avenues to fame and power, right? But he's also telling him to choose well, to choose wisely. Will you make the wise decision, the guided decision? And what he's suggesting is it's probably better that you leave now. And that's all that Jekyll asks for in his note. He's already done everything that Jekyll asks. And he says, if you want, I can take this solution that I've made and I can leave and you don't have to know any answers. And he suggests that that's probably the better choice, right? It's probably the better choice for you not to know what is going on now. But I'm leaving the choice up to you. And the narrative continues. Sir, I said, affecting a coolness that I was far from truly possessing, right? So he's trying to remain calm. He's trying to maintain this air of professionalism, evenness, but he's also, inclined. He's also terrified, right? He's like, I'm trying to act cool, but meaning, unaffected, but he inside is, heart is beating, it's racing, right? And he says, affecting a coolness that I was far from truly possessing, you speak enigmas, meaning enigmas means puzzles or riddles. And you will perhaps not wonder that I hear you with no very strong impression of belief, right? So basically he's saying, like, I don't believe you have anything extraordinary to show me. You seem like you're crazy, right? He doesn't really give any credibility to this prodigy right in front of him. But he says, but I have gone too far in the way of inexplicable services to pause before I see the end. Meaning I've gone too far. My curiosity is too. So he says inexplicable, right? Right, and that means unable to be clearly stated, right? Right. And so we see, that once again, this other word that's at the root of the term word explicit, right? We see that word explicit coming there. So, I can't, this weird, without reason, without, detail things, I've gone too far into this weirdness to not know, right, what in the heck is going on, right? One of the things, right, he remarked earlier, like when he was talking about his accoutrement, his clothing, he talked about the disparity, right? The disparity of the clothing, right? And one of the interesting things, the disparity meaning you've got this guy who's dressed as a gentleman but looks like a monkey, basically. And the disparity simply just means, unevenness, right? The unevenness of everything. The great gap, the gulf between what's going on. And the thing is he thinks that Dr. Jekyll might just have gone crazy, right? Like this whole thing. And even though he has been warned, right, that he should get out now, everything has just been too uneven, too strange, too lopsided, right? Everything that's gone so far is just too weird for him to stop now. He's, past the point of no return oftentimes means, like if you're going across a lake, maybe, you've gone so far that there's actually less distance to the opposite shore than there is to the previous shore. But Hyde does give him a way out. And he says, if you don't want to see this, if I've gone too far, in the way of inexplicable services, to pause before I see the end. It is well, replied my visitor. Lanyon, remember your vows. What follows is under the seal of our profession, our profession. So he's saying, this is the hint, right? That Hyde is Jekyll because Jekyll's a doctor, right? Seal of our profession. You can't tell anyone about what you're about to see. And now you who have so long been bound to the most narrow and material views, right? Remember when he called him a hide-bound pedant, right? Right? That he was dogmatic, He says he has material views, right? That means that strict science, right? Not in the supernatural, right? He believes that everything is, the strict traditional thing of scientific laws, right? Lanyon, you remember your vows as on the seal of our profession. Now you who have so long been bound to the most narrow and material views, you have denied the virtue of transcendental medicine, meaning something that affects something that goes beyond the physical. You who have derided your superiors, referring to himself as his superiors, behold, right? Derided, if you don't know what that word means. Derided, how do I say derided? Derided means to ridicule, to put down, to treat as beneath, or to treat with contempt, right? Right, that's what derided is. So anyway, the idea, right, is that you who have been so narrow in what you believe is possible, you don't believe in miracles, you believe in this very narrow materialist, right? There's only, matter. Behold, I'll show you. He put the glass to his lips and drank in one gulp. A cry followed. He reeled. To say he reeled, that's another word, it's not too common. Reeled, it means to suddenly or violently stagger or shift weight or lose balance, right? So if you reel, like you reel, right? It's something has knocked you off balance, right? So if you reel back, right, you all of a sudden, shift your balance suddenly, violently back. He reeled, staggered, clutched at the table, and held on, staring with injected eyes, gasping with open mouth. And as I looked, there came, I thought, a change. He seemed to swell, his face became suddenly black, and the features seemed to melt and alter. And the next moment, I had sprung to my feet and leapt back against the wall, my arms raised to shield me from that prodigy, referring to Hyde. My mind submerged in terror. Submerged simply means, dunked, immersed, right? You submerge a submarine, right? The idea here, right? You notice he says injected eyes, right? That's a word that we don't know its original meaning. That term injected, right? Normally, when we think of injected, we think of, someone's been stuck with a needle, right? You were injected with a chemical. But injected means to swell. And the reason why we use the term injected for when you get drugs put in you is when if you have liquid put into you, right, jabbed into you with a needle, right, that might cause the area to swell, right, because you're literally putting something in it and blowing it up. So that's what, when it says his injected eyes, it means his eyes are basically injected, basically means bulging or swollen, right? So, right, his injected eyes, he doesn't have needles coming out of them, right? It just means that they've swollen up. Right? And so it's a terrifying idea. His face turns black, his eyes and his face literally begins to melt and change form, right? And it's absolutely terrifying, Lanyon. Oh God, I screamed, and oh God, again and again. For there before my eyes, pale and shaken and half fainting and groping, right, meaning like reaching out, trying to grab, before him with his hands, like a man restored from death, there stood Henry Jekyll. What he told me in the next hour, I cannot bring my mind to set on paper. I saw what I saw, I heard what I heard, and my soul sickened at it. And yet now, when that sight has faded from my eyes, I ask myself if I believe it, and I cannot answer. My life is shaken to its roots, sleep has left me, the deadliest terror sits by me at all hours of the day and night, and I feel that my days are numbered, and that I must die, and yet I shall die incredulous. It means, hard to believe. Like he still is not sure if he really saw what he saw because it was so hard to believe. As for the moral turpitude, that's another phrase. It's moral turpitude is another one of those classical phrases. Turpitude refers to depravity, right? Uh, you know, so moral depravity. As for the moral turpitude that man unveiled to me, even with tears of penitence, right? So Henry Jekyll is confessing to Lanyon his sins. That was unveiled to me, even with tears of penitence, I cannot, even in memory, dwell on it without a start of horror. I will say but one thing, Utterson, and that, if you can bring your mind to credit it, will be more than enough. The creature who crept into my house that night was, on Jekyll's own confession, known by the name of Hyde, and hunted for, in every corner of the land, as the murderer of Carew. So yeah, I mean, it took me a while to read through that, and I know this has gone longer than expected, and I know we are doing analysis through it. But the idea, right, of some of the things that were talked about, just some more terms, right, that I didn't necessarily write down because I wasn't trying to make us go. But enigma, right, that refers to puzzles or riddles, right, right. This idea of the enigma has finally come to a solution. And Lanyon dies of shock because he sees a man literally get transformed by a chemical into a different man, and his face changed, and his body changed, and his friend had actually committed murder as Edward Hyde and done who knows what else. And he's still like, everything is so unbelievable. He still can't believe that it's real, right? And this idea of transcendental medicine, right? The idea that medicine that goes beyond the physical, uh, the idea that one actually might do something to the soul via chemical, right? The idea that we are, because normally people believe in this idea called dualism in the Christian West, and that means the idea of that human beings have two aspects: they have a soul and a body, right? And basically, a typical materialist does not believe that the material can affect the soul, right? And that is what Hyde has challenged, right? He has shown that this chemical affects him on the level of the soul, which seems utterly impossible and utterly wrong. And that, of course, causes great distress to Henry Jekyll or to Dr. Lanyon for obvious reasons. And he has seen this metamorphosis. First, there's the metamorphosis of the chemicals, the changes, and then there's the metamorphosis of Hyde into Jekyll. And this is why Hyde says, "Leave now while you can," right? Because this could undo you, or it could open to this new realm of power and fame, right? That's part of the temptation. Um, the idea that we need to understand in terms of the analysis is this is the first time in the text we know definitively, although I'm certain maybe some readers guessed, maybe not, that this is Henry Jekyll, right? That Hyde and Jekyll somehow share the same body, although the body goes through a physical transformation. And the things that you should understand and look at in this chapter, right? The idea of right that everything, right, was believed to be unrelated, right? How could just these few chemicals how could these few chemicals lead to the end of one's sanity or life or reputation, right? The idea that there's no way that like these things really needed to be kept secret, or that one's sanity or one's life could be so dependent on these things, right? It's showing a non-dualistic view, right? Because the idea is that the soul is affected by these salts, by these chemicals, right? And not only is the soul affected by these salts, but the other thing is to say that, right, that one's reputation, right, which is thought of as a non-material thing, can actually be changed by the material, right? The idea that something like the soul could be changed by the material is kind of that's the overall analogy, right? That he's actually carrying Henry Jekyll in that drawer in a way, if you get my meaning. That doesn't seem like something you can take in a drawer. So the reason why Lanyon is literally like he's still incredulous, right? I'm sorry, I got to end here.